So I want to talk to you for a moment about Shaun Attwood and his cryptocurrency connection. Now, you may not know who Shaun Attwood is, but Shaun Attwood's a very interesting guy. He's brilliant. He's extremely smart. There's no telling what his IQ is. I don't know if it's ever been tested, but he's probably a genius level IQ just by what he's accomplished. But he's done some very bad things in his life. This man has been he's been convicted of trafficking, ecstasy. Wow. So he's been convicted of trafficking in ecstasy. He served his time, but he talks about, I recently saw an interview where he discusses kind of what happened in his life in his time period. And I want to talk to you for that for a moment, and then I want to show you kind of a connection to cryptocurrency. So the video that I saw, by the way, is right here. And it's the ecstasy, it's on Valuetainment. Ecstasy Kingpin reveals his experience with Mexican Mafia and Sammy the Bull. This is an entire hour that is phenomenal to watch. Like, if you, part of what gets discussed, and I'm going to play just two clips here, but part of what gets discussed that makes this so fascinating is he discusses things from a perspective that most people don't understand. You see, the single biggest reason that cryptocurrency will ultimately lead to mass adoption, I think, is uncovered in these video clips I'm going to show you here in a moment. And I even think that, you know, in one of my last videos, in fact, the actual last video that I put out, I talked about, you know, proof of weak hands and the smart contract cycle, and about how you basically could get a 100% rebate when you purchase something, and how that would be possible, and how that can be a reality, how that technology is already almost in place. And I discussed that in my last video. And I'll put a card above if you want to watch that. I highly recommend you watch it because it's phenomenal. But the reason that something like this would even be in place has to do with some concepts that he discusses in these two clips. Now, I encourage you to watch this. If you like good interviews, which, you know, the guy talks about how he got started, you know, in life, and how he, you know, ended up rising up to run one of the largest ecstasy trafficking businesses that has probably ever existed in the world. I mean, it's unbelievable what he built up and how he built it up. He talks about the story, then he talks about, you know, how he got arrested. He talks about, you know, the prison system and going through the court system and the jails and eventually getting out. But there's a couple of things that he talks about here that I think, again, this is the single biggest use case. Now, I encourage you to go watch this entire, at the end of the video, I'll make certain that I put a link here to this video at the end of my video, so you can go watch the full interview for yourself. It's phenomenal. But hang on, listen to this.
How can we get him away from his co-defendants? Let's get him over to maximum security, because all my co-defendants are in minimum medium security. Now, how she did that, she knew I was applying to get my bail reduced. My bail was $750,000 cash only. She sabotaged the bail hearing. Very crafty, these prosecutors. She filed additional charges, and with an additional $750,000 bail. So the judge did not only reduce my bail, he maintained my original bail, accepted the new bail, which made my total bail $1.5 million. When your bail goes over $1 million, you're automatically reclassified to maximum security.
So that's the guideline.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up my second year in maximum security. Now, by the end of that, that's where they're telling me, like you're going to get 200 years, because every time you spoke about drugs on the phone carries 5 to 10 years. And this isn't deals, this is just personal, small stuff. If we go to...
So you can go watch the rest of this, but it's really fascinating. He ends up getting like 6 years when it's all said and done with, and he discusses the entire story of how that occurred. But I hope you caught what he said. And he gives several examples of this. This is just one soundbite that I found. I actually ended up watching this 2 days ago. He talks about how the prosecutor totally made up charges. And it goes a step further. He had that happen 2 different times. He actually had the prosecutor, like, when the trial's over, she intentionally, the trial's over, it's finished, it's done with. She, quote unquote, made a mistake that literally could have killed him, but nobody cared. There's no recourse for the prosecutor in doing this. There's absolutely nothing you can do. You can't countersue her. You can't do anything. And he talks about examples in his case where these things were done that are not justice. It's not based off the justice system at all. It's a level of corruption that is just unbelievable that unfortunately not enough people pay attention to. So I encourage you to go watch this entire video. Here's the next clip he talks about. So in this next clip, he's talking about the prison system itself. Listen, I'm a big fan of a strict prison system personally. I think if you hurt someone, you kill somebody, you take somebody's stuff, it needs to be a strict punishment. I come from a background in my home where, punishment was serious, it was consistent. And you were told to be in line, and you were respectful to adults. You didn't bother anybody. You didn't hurt anybody. You just did what you were supposed to do. And so I'm a big fan of that. But what I'm not a fan of is corruption. The level of corruption. Take a look at this. Or listen.
Person A murders, rapes, robs person B. There's always a victim. When they ramped up the war on drugs and said who are the easiest people to arrest, kids with weed. When you arrest a kid with weed, who's that person hurting?
Himself?
Yeah, himself.
Sure.
So the whole purpose of the police, which was to take person A out of society that hurts person B, has been subverted by the war on drugs. A kid with weed is hurting themselves, maybe their family. That's a cry for help. That kids need mentorship. That kid may need some mental health counselling. That kid needs encouragement in life. And what do we do with them? We put them in a place where they're going to get indoctrinated by a neo-Nazi gang who idolise getting Hitler tattoos and swastikas, and you've got to murder someone to be a full member, and you're going to make your criminal connections, and they're going to give you a swastika on your forehead, so when you get out and go for a job interview, you can't get a job, you're going to come right back to the gang. And the jail is going to say, hey, if we educate these people, if we give them their high school diplomas, when they get out, they're going to stand a chance in life. No, let's allow it to be drug and gang infested mayhem, because when they get out, we'll give them $50 gate money, say have a nice day. They're going to go right back to crime because it's drug and gang infested mayhem in here. And when they get arrested, $50,000 of taxpayers' money per year, right back to the jail or the prison. I think it's up to 70,000 now. I'm just quoting figures from when I got arrested. It's a racket on the taxpayers, it's a shakedown.
I see that. So the percentage that I saw.
It's a racket on the taxpayers. It's a shakedown. Let's keep watching a little bit more.
Is after 1 year, 56% of prisoners make it back in.
Yeah.
3 years is 67%, 5 years is 76%. So once you go in, there's a very high likelihood of you getting back in within the next 1, 3, 5 years.
Corrections Corporation are boasting in their annual report to their shareholders, our profit growth is guaranteed because they keep coming back. They're not correcting people, they're breaking them.
So Shaun,
So he goes on, he also shares, now listen, the mainstream reality can't accept this. If you're looking at this and you're like, of course, they're just bad people. One of the things that is in this, if you go watch the full interview, one of the things he talks about some very fascinating studies that have done and other models when it comes to certain types of offenders like drug abusers, etc. Now, we're not talking about drug dealers like him. We're talking about drug offenders, drug users. He talks about other models and about how they've radically decreased their prison populations and what they've done, how they've basically shrunk drug use in other models in other countries. And the crazy thing is, he talks about these are models that are known. Like the smartest people in the room who are responsible for setting up judicial systems and prison systems, etc., know this. They have access to this information. They know this. This is not a secret. But why is it that we have a system that ends up being profit-driven, and meaning the prison system ends up being profit-driven to the point that a certain level of corruption is left in place, and the least advantaged in society are consistently taken advantage of? And we're not creating an environment where people can rise up, take personal responsibility in the same way for themselves. Or we're not creating an environment to help people who won't help in the early stages. I believe most people in the early stages won't help. Now, I'm not one of these people that think that we have to feed the world and solve everyone's problems. Not everybody wants help. And if you don't want help and you want to reoffend and you're out there hurting people, but we're talking about low-level drug users here. This video, the whole thing is fascinating. Just take my word on it. Some of the stuff he talks about. So where's the Shaun Attwood cryptocurrency connection? The connection is corruption. because of corruption that exists in the system. You know, my video on my channel, I've oftentimes talked about the banking system, and I've talked about the fractional reserve lending system, that most people don't even understand how these systems function in our current society, that literally disadvantages us as individuals. And it's because of that manipulation of the financial system and the government systems that ultimately cryptocurrency has to survive. Without question, it has to survive. Come watch this full video. I'll put a link at the end of my channel. This full video is fascinating. Grab some popcorn, sit back, grab a beverage, just take a watch and a listen. And he gives a perspective that most people wouldn't have today. He's a highly functioning citizen in society. He gives back. He does a lot of things. He's trying to help people improve. He's written over, like, I don't know, I think it's some crazy number, like 100 books or something. And he mostly gives his books away on various topics of interest. And he's really got a heart and a goal to be able to help bring change to people's lives, specifically young people in the prison systems, etc. You got to come watch this. He talks about how part of the video, he talks about how he had his moment where he realized what he was doing for all those years in prison. He saw the end result of addiction, and he thought, you know, when he was selling ecstasy in the clubs and at the raves, you know, he talks about everybody was having a good time. He didn't see it that way back then. And when he ends up seeing it, he talks about how much it bothered him to recognize that he had been a part of that system and causing people that kind of pain. You just got to come watch the entire video. It's absolutely phenomenal. By the way, Valuetainment is awesome. There's some good interviews on this guy's channel. You got to come check it out without question. Definitely, I'll put a link at the end of this video. Go ahead and watch this video. Go ahead and watch it now. Don't delay. Just start it right away.